Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here today with Jeffrey Poole and a guest, Simon Whistler. Joe is off at a friend's graduation because we're here in the morning so that we could catch Simon, who is located in Prague, I believe. You guys, I feel like I don't even need to introduce Simon because you probably all listened to his show already, but he's the podcaster for the popular Rocking Self-Publishing show. And he's also written 2 books for indie authors, Bootstrapping for Indies, Self-Publishing on a Budget, and Audiobooks for Indies, the one-stop guide for authors looking to make more money selling audiobooks. And that's kind of why we brought him on the show today, to interrogate him on both on kind of how to get your audiobooks produced, and also hopefully a little bit on how to market them once they're live. Because I have 2 books coming out this summer as audiobooks. One I'm doing myself through ACX, and one that got picked up by Podium Publishing. They're actually doing my Dragon Blood series. So I want to figure out how I can actually sell some books, some of these audiobooks. So Simon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here and happy to be interrogated. And I also appreciate you doing this at a friendly time for me, because I think you were saying before we hit record that if Joe was joining us, it would be about 3 o'clock in the morning my time. So this is better for me.
Yeah, we like our guests to be awake, just a little bit. All right. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into narrating and podcasting and what all you've been working on?
Sure. Well, I got into narrating before I got into podcasting. I started off, I think I was studying university, or I was on summer break, and I was like, I don't really want to work in the shop for like minimum wage, selling newspapers or serving drinks at a bar. And so, as many people do, I turned to Google. And someone had once told me that I had a nice speaking voice, so I Googled, how do you make money with your voice? And then I found a few kind of sketchy looking websites and sent off a few recorded tapes of me reading what they told me to read on like a $15 headset, something like this. And then one guy got back to me and he said, yeah, you could, why not read this? It's a bit longer, it's a bit more complicated. I'll give you some tips and we can go from there. And so then he was kind of like an agent for this stuff, started putting me in touch with, or not putting me in touch, but with finding books for me to record. And so I was recording a bunch of books, nothing particularly groundbreaking. I wouldn't particularly look them up because they're my early books and they are fairly boring. One of them was about coping with a medical condition called diverticulitis, which, as you can imagine, is a real thriller. So moving on from there, the kind of indie world was exploding. I'd taken a couple of years out to finish my degree, to do a bit of traveling, and then kind of after that it was kind of, shall I go work in an office or shall I try doing this voice thing again? Emailed a few authors. Basically I was just going and reading the first chapter of their book and sending it off and saying, hey, did that sound good? Do you want to work together and we can split the royalties? And this was before ACX, so it was not easy. And so I did that for a while. Then the podcast came. This is turning into a really long story. The podcast came and I was like, it came about not because I wanted to be involved in the indie world, but because I wanted to do a podcast and was involved in the indie world. And I was like, these people who I do books for, they usually have interesting stories about how they became writers. Indie publishing was exploding. It seemed like a pretty sensible thing to do a podcast about. And yeah, just basically started interviewing people. Later wrote those 2 books you mentioned, the audiobooks one first, and then more recently the bootstrapping one, which is free, plug over. And that's my story up to the present day.
All right. Well, I'm really proud of you to be able to get through a book on. See, I can't pronounce it, so I could never read it. Yeah. That just wouldn't happen.
There were other equally thrilling titles.
Yeah. Did you start out working for traditional publishers then before switching to indies?
Yeah, no one huge, kind of just small press doing. One of them did specific medical titles. One of them did, I think, a couple of books about religion, and one was about out-of-body experiences, which was interesting, if slightly bizarre. But yeah, just small presses, basically.
All right, and I actually know before ACX too, I did my first 3 Emperor's Edge books with a small production company. And I don't make any money from them really, so because they're also out there for free. I did it through audiobooks.com. How did people go about getting their stuff published on Amazon kind of before ACX?
So Audible was there a long time before, and basically if you wanted to work with Audible, you had to be someone of relative, like have a catalog of sorts. I think it was 5 titles they needed you to have before you could even register with them, and these titles kind of had to be pre-produced and all ready to go and meet their standards, and just basically for publishers who were willing to sink money into it. But there were some companies acting as middlemen, kind of like ACX is doing now brilliantly. One of them was Open Book Audio, which I put a book through. There's one that still exists, I think, haven't checked on it in a while, that is something I mentioned in the book for people outside of the US and the UK, where ACX currently operates, called eBook It. But yeah, these kind of intermediaries did exist and allowed you to get on Audible without being a publisher, but also never really makes brilliant money because they take a cut on top of getting a smaller cut from Audible, and yeah, basically the whole situation is just way less favorable. And now ACX are like, even though I'm sure we'll talk about this, but they dropped it from 50 to 40%, it's still like, now it's way better than it was before. So people were complaining. I'm like, whoa, I remember what it was like before. I'm still happy with that 40%.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited. I'm hoping to actually maybe make a little money, or at least cover the costs of the one I'm doing on my own. So we will see.
Breaking is a good thing.
All right, so let's get into ACX a little bit then, because I think most people who, especially indie authors that are going to produce their own book, don't have anyone doing it for them. That's probably the route they're going to take. Could you tell us a little bit about the platform and kind of finding the process of finding to narrate your book for you?
Yeah, and just to say, if you are an indie author and you don't want to do it yourself, but you haven't been, an agency hasn't reached out to you saying, hey, we'd love to produce your book, we think it's going to make millions or whatever, a lot of people don't quite realize that ACX is a great way to meet those people. Studios do, I won't say poach, but they kind of look out for books that are up for audition on ACX and will approach authors about, some sort of deal outside of that where they'll produce it and everything for you outside of ACX. So it's a place to find that. But as you mentioned, what the vast majority of people do is self-production. So you put it up, and then there are a couple of options. You can pay for the production up front, where you pay something called a per finished hour rate. So I usually use an example of a 10-hour book, just because it's a nice round number. And basically, when you see a book on Audible, so you're browsing and it says like Emperor's Edge, 10 hours or however long, then that is finished hours. So the book is 10 finished hours, and that's basically how you pay for it. So your narrator will have a rate per finish. This is a really roundabout way, but so he'll say my rate per hour, per finished hour is $150 to $250, and then so that for that finished book it will cost you $2,500. The other route is where you split the royalties, and basically for 7 years from the time of the book's completion, you split all of the royalties with the narrator down the middle. So that would basically break down as you get your 40% from ACX, and then that is split 20% for the narrator, 20% for you. And yeah, those in simple terms, those are the two, and then the agency route is the third main options.
Okay, and for people who don't have a lot of money starting out to sink into this, because it can definitely be expensive, because I put both options out there when I was looking for people. I said I would do either royalty split or pay a flat fee. And the person, of course, that I liked wanted to be paid up front, but that was for her and her producer. So I just listened to the audiobook, and there was like one error in the entire 10 hours of narration for her to fix.
Wow.
And I was so impressed, because that was not my experience before. It was like every page I had to comment on something that was a little flubbed or the wrong word or word left out or something. So in my case, I did not regret that at all. But I guess, do you have any thoughts on like if there's one is more desirable, or how the royalty split works, if that can work perfectly well, or that kind of thing?
It's interesting. When you were paying, you paid the per finished hour rate, or and the producer's fee was lumped into that?
Yes, it's $3.25 per hour, but it included her producer and her. So
yeah, normally this is not something that it's just par for the course. It's expected. I mean, whether you're producing it yourself, which I do, and then I'll just sit there for hours with the text open on one page and then the recording just playing out on the other and just going through myself, and I won't have a book finished. We're really selling myself here with only one error, but I won't have an error per page. But yeah, when you are looking, just make sure that you are getting that, whether it's $3.25 an hour or whatever. Just make sure that that's the final price that you pay. I think if the sample is good, because they'll do 15 minutes for you before you've committed. If that is largely error-free, exactly what you want, then go with it. And if they're producing themselves, then that's fine. And yeah, if maybe they carry on and there's 8 more hours, which isn't it's a lot longer than 15 minutes. It all comes down to whether how much you're willing to pay and what you're going to get for that. I think if you are paying more, then and that producer's time is included, then you're going to get a book with one mistake in it. But obviously the narrator will, if once you've spotted those errors, they're obliged to go through and fix them all. So that's good.
Right, you definitely want to put out as professional of a product as you can. Especially, I've heard that in order for Amazon to do the Whispersync, so that I don't know how that works exactly. I'm not a big read aloud on my Kindle person, but that the text has to be almost an exact match for what they say versus what's in the book.
You can get away with flubbed words. You can't get away with missing sentences. Seems to be because Amazon won't know if the word's being pronounced right or not. At least it seems that way. It's a bit of a mystery. But yeah, big errors will get noticed. So when you're, proof your book carefully, have the text by you when you're listening to what you get back from your narrator. And I mean, a good narrator is happy to pick up mistakes. And yeah,
okay.
They should.
And do you find that with the authors, or excuse me, the producers that want to do the royalty split or are willing to do it, is it more likely to be newer people, or can it go either way? Like if they're excited about a book maybe and they think it has a lot of potential, I could see them wanting to get in on the royalty split.
Yeah, I mean, the narrator's going to look at the book on Amazon and make a judgment call. If the book's got 2,000 reviews and is number 4 in science fiction or whatever, they're going to be like, yeah, okay, royalty split sounds pretty good to me. But if it's number 200,000 and the book is 200,000 words long and it just doesn't look like a professionally put together book, you're really going to struggle to attract someone on a royalty split basis. I think whether it's new people or established people, I think more established narrators tend to prefer the per finished hour deal. Usually if they're doing it full time, it's easier to it's easier to work out, okay, I'm going to make this much money this month, rather than let it, be, or it could be this, it could be that, which obviously shifts the risk onto the author. But I think it kind of depends on the financial mindset of the narrator. Like, I generally prefer, I would choose a royalty split over it, because I'm like, I'll take the risk, I'll see if it works. If it doesn't, it's I can tolerate the risk, I suppose, and some narrators don't like to tolerate the risk.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, have you had any that you've done that have kind of taken off, and you're like really glad that you did the royalty split?
Yeah, write, publish, repeat is a really good earner. Some of them it's kind of like don't really earn at all. Some of them earn pretty well. That one is a consistently good earner. I mean, it's a popular book. We both have platforms about self-publishing. Me, Johnny, Sean at Sean and Dave. So yeah, that's a pretty good seller. That was one I was like, thanks guys for letting me do this, because if they were thinking about me as just a regular narrator, they would have probably paid me up front, and they were like, we'll do this on a split deal, probably because they're nice to me.
Yeah, I've actually listened to that book. It's really weird imagining your accent, because you have this really genteel British accent, but some of the things that those guys are just so laid back. Oh,
and I did a Robot Proletariat for them as well, which was had not like erotic scenes, but definitely it's got a bit of a romance angle at points, and that was interesting. I think they played some of that on their show, to my embarrassment.
Nice. Yeah, I actually had maybe it's the thing this year that publishers are starting to look at indie authors, because I had somebody email my pen name too, asking about the rights to one of the book, and I write kind of the smutty science fiction romances with the pen name, so I'm not sure I could listen to it out loud. That would just be awkward.
Yeah, I like some stuff you read, you're like, and then it's a comedy as well. Like, I guess sort of is definitely good comedic elements, and some stuff you'd just be like, because I don't know, people, again, not really selling myself, but I won't read the book before I narrate it typically. I'll just like roll right into it and fix my mistakes afterwards, and it does sound good, it works for me. But there'll be points and I'll be like, that is so funny, and I won't be able to stop laughing for like 10 minutes. I'll just have to get it out of your system, and then you go back to record again, and then again the joke hits you, and you're like, yeah, this is going to take a while. But those are the best books to record. Those beat the ones on diverticulitis.
I can't believe there were no jokes on the intestine book.
Shame. They're like, when you have this and it attaches to the outside of your stomach, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. This sounds horrible.
Not only will you not be able to have fun, you won't be able to sleep tonight.
I won't be able to have lunch.
One other thing I wanted to ask you before passing you to Jeff here, he has a pile of questions. But sometimes there's $1,000 stipend that ACX offers. They actually offered it to me. If I did the royalty split, they would pay an additional $1,000 to the producer, which is kind of why I was bummed that the person I wanted didn't want to do the royalty split. But I was wondering if you knew anything about that and how to get that offer, because I think Brian Cohen mentioned that he actually just emailed and was able to get it by asking. But
yeah, this is the kind of what I would recommend, and I recommend it in the book. But just to clarify, $1,000 because the book was 10 hours, or $1,000 straight up?
They were just offering, I don't know if it was based on the hours, because it was like 9.5, 10 hours. But
yeah. It's usually my understanding of the stipend, unless it's changed very recently, is that it is $100 per finished hour. And basically, so if the book is 10 hours long, your narrator will get $1,000 because there's 10 finished hours at $100, and they will split the royalties with you just like they normally would for 7 years. I'm surprised. Like, I love those deals. I'm getting like half of the rate that I might charge for a book plus the royalties for 7 years. That's a pretty sweet deal to me. But sorry, where were we going with this? How to get it? Yes,
right.
Email. The important question. You should email them for sure. The support at acx.com. They are amazing. Like, I don't know. I don't think I've been in touch with Amazon support before, or at least in a long time. I think I did it for the perma-free thing, and it just was stock emails, and we have decided not to do it at this time, or congratulations, we've Mr. Whistler or whatever. But with ACX, it's a different game. They're on the ball. They will send you a personal reply, having looked at things. But there are some things you should also do, and I outline these in the book, which is basically make your book look as awesome as possible. So if you're thinking of getting an audiobook done, do it on the back of some promos. So if your book is doing well, and ACX are going to look at that and consider that when doing a stipend. I say this is like it's a sure thing, but I'm guessing. What else? And just make a persuasive argument. Like I think Brian was saying, I have a self-publishing podcast. I can talk about my good experience with the stipend. I can talk about my good experience with ACX. I can talk about how this is going to help sell more audiobooks and all of this good stuff. And like I've got a series coming, and I really want to be encouraged to do the rest. Basically, just treat it like $1,000 is a lot of money, and they're not giving it away. So sell your audiobook to them. And cross your fingers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to do it after you had your BookBub ad or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, bear in mind they are Amazon, so they, how much is one hand talking to the other, but they know about promotions and how well your book has done historically because they can pull that data if, I guess, they called their buddy in Amazon elsewhere. But maybe they do, maybe they don't.
Right, and I should say with my title, it wasn't necessarily selling huge. This is a series that it's my Rust and Relic series. I only publish one a year, and it was quite a ways since the publishing of the last one, but it did have a good cover, so maybe that helped. But
also matters, yeah. Good description, good length, yeah. Long books do well in audio, so yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to hand you to Jeff now to ask a few more questions. I don't think he's done audiobooks yet, so he should have some good questions.
Sounds good.
Hence the War and Peace length of questions I've got for you here.
That would be that must be a 24-hour long audiobook.
Okay, with regards to what you were mentioning before about when you were saying that you couldn't have your lunch there, you said you don't actually read the book first. Have you ever started to narrate a book and you're looking going, oh my God, this is the worst thing written. I don't like the subject. Maybe it's just you're reading a really horrific, grisly murder scene, and you're just like, God, I hate this. I can't wait for this one to be over. I was just wondering if you've ever run into that where you can actually be selective on which books you want to narrate.
My professional response is no comment, and you can read into that how you will.
Okay, okay. And we also we were talking before about the authors that that would love to be able to have their books professionally done for them, but those that can't. So if an author were to try and take it on themselves, what sort of equipment would you expect them to have at their disposal?
To narrate the book themselves.
Yes.
The first thing I would say is if you've written a non-fiction book, this is definitely something easier to tackle. If you are a fiction author, it is difficult. You should be prepared for a long and hard journey. I actively recommend not doing it in the book, but I do give some tips on equipment, which I'm more than happy to go into. I love this thing, which for podcast listeners they won't see, but I'm bringing in this microphone. It's called a Rode Podcaster. A lot of people would give me flack for not using something called XLR, which is like a more complicated, it plugs into a mixer, then it plugs into your computer. It's more analog or technical or whatever, but I love this thing. It plugs into your USB port. It costs a couple $100, and I think my books sound professional. They meet all the standard requirements in ACX. There's no reviews about production quality on the books done on this thing, and it's a great piece of kit. In front of it, you can grab something called a pop filter, which is $5 on Amazon, or you can just get a coat hanger and wrap a pair of tights tightly around it, and then pop that in between you and the microphone, and basically it stops these very harsh puh sounds that you'll get on an uncovered microphone. Free software, Audacity does everything you need. You don't need anything more complicated than that. It's open source. It's really easy to understand. In terms of meeting the requirements for ACX, the best thing I would do is I have I think it's 16 YouTube videos just in a playlist, and they're each about 2 minutes long, and they tell you exactly what you need to do to meet the quality requirements for ACX. So rather than me talk about you need to have it at -18 to 23 RMS and stuff, this technical stuff that's complicated, if you guys have show notes, I'd recommend just popping a link to that. It's free. I don't have anything selling there. It's just
we'll definitely add that to the notes.
Cool. And that's your basic setup, really. Then editing is a business unto itself. First timers, I definitely recommend doing something called punch and roll recording, which is punch and roll. I think that's what it's called. It's been a while. Where basically, so I'm reading and I'm like, it was a dark and stormy, and I mess up. So stop the recording, delete the bit you just did, go back. It was a dark and stormy night, and then carry on. And every time you make a mistake, pause, delete it, and then carry on recording, because otherwise you have 20 hours, and sitting down for the first time to grind through that 20 hours of recorded audio to do the book is a nightmare. It's what I do now, because I've learned to tolerate it, and I have a person who does that for me. But it is.
So you cheat then.
Yes, absolutely, solidly cheating. Yeah, so you could do it that way, and that, I'm surprised how short that was. I thought there would be more to it, but it's buy a microphone, plug it into the computer, get the software, edit it, make sure it meets the ACX specs, and obviously, if it's fiction, this is something I can't really give advice on, but it's you need to be a bit of an actor. You need to be able to do the voices for your characters. You need to be able to add tension and speed up at the right places and slow down at the right places and have dramatic pause and all of these things that aren't in a book, but an author or a reader has in their minds.
Yeah, because my wife and I, we listen to audiobooks all the time when we're traveling, And I always, because I'm always in the, I've always thought about releasing one of my own books as an audiobook, and I thought, I wonder, I might be able to do it myself. But then I listened to all the different characters, and you can hear the audiobooks where the narrator does a really good job of changing their voice and changing the personality. So person one just stopped talking, person three just came into the scene, sort of thing. And then I listened to how a lot of them, especially guys, we have a little bit more difficult time changing their voice enough to try and bring across a female voice.
Yes.
I just listened to one a couple of days ago that the guy did a horrible job trying to switch to a female voice, and I started talking to myself in the car, wondering if I could do it. I made myself laugh every single time, so I'm pretty sure I can't do it.
It is a real challenge, because it's like, do you go for the general advice is don't go high pitched, just go like somehow a touch more feminine, because if it's I don't know what issue you had with the guy, but often I'm listening to one, it's like, dude, why are you're putting on this high pitched voice? And I'm just like, if you just spoke normally, just a little bit more femininely, I could really get into this a bit easier. I know you're a man, there's no hiding that fact. You got a deep voice going on for like 90% of the book.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Is this guy? He's clearly a guy, has a nice deep voice. He didn't go high pitch, but all he did was just soften it just a smidge. But there's several different female characters in there, but they all spoke the same way. So it was hard to follow the transition from him talking in a male voice to a female voice. And I would just remember looking at my wife's like, okay, which character just said that? Because it was kind of hard to follow along there. But I guess he was too afraid to sound, I don't know, girly or whatever the case may be. But it was hard.
It can be difficult, especially when you get into, like, if you have 5 women all from the same backgrounds in the same part of the country, and it's like you can't give them different accents to differentiate them. Or just like slightly different, which is a challenge. But that's what I normally do. I'm like, I'm going to make you slightly more posh. I'm going to make you slightly more like Southern. I'm going to make you slightly French.
Okay, I've got to ask, can you give us a demonstration, just a single sentence like something you said before in a female voice?
I would, but I will tell you about what I did. And basically, I recorded this whole book. This was Robot Proletariat, again, the book for Shawnee. Sorry, it wasn't Robot Proletariat. It was Titanic with Zombies, which is basically a book set on it's the Titanic. It's got all the characters that you know from the movie and history. And basically, there's an Irish character and an American character, an English character, and a Southern American woman. And the Irish character and the Southern American woman are always having conversations, always, and I cannot switch. So I'd be like, I kind of feel like I won't do it now, because in fact what I do is I'll listen to these language tapes which have like examples of accents. So it'll be like some typically Irish words, and then you'll kind of repeat them back, and then it'll be like, all right, my Irish accent is on. But switching that and then to the Southern American woman was really hard. So I just read it all normally, and then went back through the entire book and read all her dialogue separately and spliced it in, which was painful, but worth it, because otherwise it would sound terrible.
I've always kind of wondered about that. When you listen to a book, you hear one person, or hear the narrator speaking in person one who's completely different, and just like that, switches over to person two who's completely different. I should have known that there are ways to, like, okay, we're just going to go back to that scene, I'll fix that crap later, and redub it all in the right voice.
It was. It's a production. It doesn't... Johnny and Sean were making fun of me, like, Simon, he has perfect diction. He does the books in one take. Just one take. It's so far from it. It is twice as long, and there are markers in the audio and things you have to go back to and cut out and swap in, and the editing and production process.
It's the same thing when writing. You said, and I was like, okay, I can't think of a character name there. The heck with it. A whole bunch of X's, and I'll just make sure I get to that when I come back to it. So, yeah, I hear that. So essentially you're saying if an author really wants to try to do this themselves, what they really need to do is just get themselves a good microphone, because you can pretty much get everything else you need right online.
I'm just kind of thinking about it now, and yeah, the big bit of gear that you need is a microphone. I used to do it in a cupboard and stuff. It kind of matters what type of microphone you buy. This is a bit technical, but there are two types, a condenser microphone and a dynamic microphone. This one that I have here is a dynamic, and basically when you won't hear the difference, but when you get really close into it, it only kind of picks up the audio from right close to the end. So like there is a garbage truck backing up down my road right now and it's beeping away, and this wouldn't even pick it up. So I could hear it in my ears, but I probably wouldn't even do a retake. But I was using another microphone before, and that would be like if someone is walking down the street, it would pick up their footsteps. And so it kind of matters what gear you get. But now you can probably hear a bit of an echo on this microphone because I'm in one of these apartments they have in Europe with the big ceilings and the wood floors, and it's just like an echo chamber. But again, this microphone is brilliant for it. It picks up nothing. And,
nice.
Yeah, really nice. But
and
again,
that was one called a dynamic microphone?
Yeah, there are a few out there. A friend of mine who's recently started a podcast, Matt Morris, he put one for it's like $70, and I think it sounds better than this one. I can't remember what it's called, but I will forward it to you by email if you want to include it, because it sounds awesome.
For $70, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, I was like, I've got to buy one of these, and because this is how they do things on Amazon, on Amazon.com it's like $70. On Amazon.co.uk it's like $200 plus shipping to Prague.
Oh jeez.
Yeah. Not
Okay.
cool, Amazon. Not cool.
With regards to audiobooks, have you noticed a trend on maybe which genre of audiobooks perform the best, whether, say, romance or sci-fi or fantasy? Is there one that outperforms the others, typically?
This is a really hard call. I think the longer books do better. So fantasy tends to be pretty long, I guess.
It can be.
Yeah, and the reason for this is most people who are on Audible have a subscription, so it's not like you go in and you purchase something a la carte. You're paying $15 a month for 1 credit, and 1 credit buys you a book, whether it's 2 hours or whether it's 24 hours. So you can kind of get War and Peace or a novella for the same price.
So you want to get your money's worth, is that it?
Exactly. So if you get a long book, but then of course there are disadvantages. The upfront costs, if you're paying for production, are going to be bigger. If you're narrating it yourself, your number of headaches is going to be bigger. And yeah, length is a big one. I think what's nice about audiobooks is if you've got a successful book on Amazon, you've probably already got an idea of how it's going to perform. So if your book is doing well on Amazon, it's a really good indicator that it's going to do well on the audio formats, assuming it's not a book that falls into some really niche topics like fitness or cooking, because those never work as audiobooks. Did one of those, not a great seller. And yeah, so the longer books work, books that are working well on Amazon work. It's just I think of a few people I know or who I've talked to who are just crushing it with audio, and a couple of them are in horror, which I don't know, it's a very small sample size, so I can't really tell. Audible doesn't have the same kind of level of development as Amazon, where you can kind of see sales rank of books overall and then see sales rank in categories. You can basically look at its number of reviews and make a judgment based on that, because there's just not the data, unfortunately.
Alrighty. And now I'm sure that we've completely dissuaded from most people trying to tackle this themselves. I remember looking into.
Sorry, I don't mean to dissuade. I just want to say, it's a lot of work. Be prepared.
Yeah. Because I've been thinking about it. It's like, well, maybe I might be able to do this myself. The thing that would get me would be able to keep a straight face, because I've got a lot of humor in my books, and then be able to switch easily between voices there. Now that I know that you could theoretically go back and just correct the areas, but that sounds like it would be a pain in the butt and a long, extensive process to do that.
It is, and I mean, you can just hit pause and wait, and then do the voice, and then just delete the silence, which is easier. I just go and splice it in later because I'm like, I just want to get the whole thing recorded and then fix it later, just because I'm a masochist.
But okay, so if an actual author, like a beginning indie author, was curious about trying to get, convince a producer or attract a producer to like maybe, hey, come take a look at my book. I think this would be a great audiobook. What advice would you give for someone to try to attract the attention of a producer?
Yeah, don't rush through it. On ACX, when you upload the book, you're asked to give details about it. You're asked to give an audition script and all these sorts of things. Again, you're trying to attract someone who's going to be a business partner in a way for 7 years. They're going to be sharing it with you, so you want to make it an attractive proposition and take your time thinking about that. So in the description, put lots of information. So say there are characters with these voices, characters with this, lay everything out for them, tell them how long it's going to be, tell them how well the book's done, tell them any ideas you have for promotion for the book and how that could follow over to the audiobook, tell them about your success with other this is a first-time person, your success with your books on Amazon. Also, what else could you do? If you get the stipend, that's a huge thing, so definitely try for that. Make it seem like you're someone who's easy to work with, so I'm not saying you don't want to go through and pick out all the errors, but you also, if you go through that 15-minute thing that you do before you say, yeah, let's go and do the 10 hours, if you've picked out like 100 things, minor things in that, your narrator's going to be like, uh-oh. And also, so I guess that's a bit later on, but that's definitely a factor to keep in mind. But then obviously you want something that's perfect. You want your book to be exactly how you want it, but just be careful not to micromanage. And again, I think, especially if it's your first time going through it, rely on the narrator a bit, because they kind of know what they're doing. Unless they're admitting this is their first book or whatever, they've done it a few times. They know kind of a pause here would work well, kind of this kind of stuff. And yeah, so try not to come across as a micromanager, I guess, would be a because I've seen this sometimes, and it's like, oh, this sounds tough. This sounds like this would be a really hard project that would take about 6 times longer than I would want it to, and I'll say no on that basis, and I'll tell them something else.
Not to say that I admit that I prejudge people, but there are times when I've actually started, I'm working with somebody on a book, or I'm also a computer tech as well. I'm working with a tech, and they're on a tech call, and they're like, okay, well, I need to do this, and why is this thing changed appearance over here? Why did this web page do this? Why? I'm like, oh my god, this one's going to be a nightmare. So I can just tell right off the bat. So translation, don't be snarky and don't be too nitpicky right off the bat.
Yeah, in a sentence, got it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's say, like, once the author actually gets a producer, the formalities agreed upon, and they start working with it. I remember you saying something about where you can say that you start speaking about the text. You read a couple pages. Now, do you give that to the author, or let's say like make it available to the author so the author can listen to it and say, okay, there's a couple of words that are mispronounced here, or this person should sound more like this. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah. On pronunciations, especially, this is sci-fi and fantasy, there's probably going to be made-up words.
A lot.
Absolutely get on your computer and read and go through the words that are made up and read them into the microphone, and then send that file to the narrator. I've had someone who I won't name, but they had their whole book done, and then they were like, wait, this person's not pronounced like that. And because they'd sent them a sheet that was kind of phonetically done, and the narrator was from a different part of the country and pronounced, Bath differently. That's just the example I use, but from where I'm from in England, it's Bath, and from the north, it's Bath. So it's a really different way of saying things. So get onto the computer and be like, it's pronounced Bath. That's how I want you to say it throughout this audiobook. And in terms of, so that should take a lot of the headache out up front, because you don't want to have to go through and then have that all fixed later. So do that before you even start recording. Like in the audition, that's fine. You're not really looking for them to get the pronunciation perfect. For the first 15 minutes that they'll record, that's when you are. And obviously before they go and do that 15 minutes, send them that pronunciation sheet. So you also asked about the audition and then the recording process after that. Basically, you can, when you're putting your book up on ACX, you get an option to upload like a Word document, and you can copy what you want from your book into that. So I would copy, don't just go into the first chapter, and this is again, showing that you're committed to the project. Don't just grab something from the first chapter and throw it up there. Find a scene with dialogue of different characters. Find a scene that's a bit more complicated. Find a scene that you'd think would be really challenging to narrate, and kind of mash them together, because it doesn't have to be one long thing. You just put breaks in it and say, go read this. Again, if you're asking for like a 20-page audition, you might struggle to get auditions. So to be reasonable, I think 15 minutes, which is about, say, 1,000, 2,000 words, is a good place. It's a good kind of audition length and should give you an idea of the narrator.
So essentially you're trying to challenge the narrator that, okay, I'll bet you, let's see how well they do this scene. If they do this scene well, they could probably handle the book well, essentially,
right.
Is what you're saying.
That's right. And I think you don't want to come into that place where you're, the narrator's 3 hours into the book and you're committed to it because you've accepted them, and then they're kind of butchering the action scenes or whatever, and because their kind of build-up voice was very suspenseful and kind of laid back, and then they get into the action scenes and it's just as laid back, which you don't want. So definitely test your narrator. You'll get those auditions in, you choose one, and then you go through to production. And the narrator will go away and produce 15 minutes, the first 15 minutes of the book. So from title and author name until 15 minutes. And then they'll send that to you for you to review. And you can send them feedback at that point. But once you've accepted that 15 minutes, you're locked in. So if you've said, yes, this is good, then they will go and record the rest of the book. And then if you want to cancel, it starts to get really expensive.
I'll bet. How long does it take from start to finish? For, let's say, a 10-hour book, how long would it take to actually, for you to narrate it, get it all cleaned up and present it, say, here I go, I'm done?
A lot of factors in play. One, experience of the narrator. Two, complexity of the text. For me, when I was first starting, it would be like, 6 hours probably would get me 1 hour. Now for a solid, I do mostly nonfiction. For a relatively straightforward nonfiction book, maybe 3 hours per hour that's finished. I now outsource my editing, so I'm including my editor's time.
Cheater,
excuse me. Optimizer. It's better to be reading books than slicing books around. And again, fiction would take me way longer. Fiction maybe takes me twice as long. So 6 hours. Oh, that sounds too big. 2 hours, double's probably an overestimation. I'd say it takes 2.5 hours to record 1 hour, and then another 2 hours to tidy everything up.
Oh, that makes sense. What type of format is the audiobook released at ACX? I mean, is it compatible on just about everybody's e-reader devices? I mean, it's just basic MP3s. What is it?
Wow. I totally have the app, and that's the only way I've ever done things. I can't believe I don't know the answer to this question. I don't even address it in my book. I assume there's MP3s to download. They just have the app. They just have the app. I'm sorry. I feel
that's
like
okay. We'll just
I'm supposed to be the expert on this topic.
No worries. No worries.
Wow.
Okay, and let's see here. Let me make sure this is my last one. My last question I have for you here is, what are some things for authors to avoid when they're looking to get their book turned into an audiobook? I mean, like if a producer says, I'll do this for you, and they start saying certain things, what are some of the red flags that authors should be looking for?
Long response times, unwillingness to make corrections, unreasonable demands. So if you're like, this is how this word is pronounced, and they're like, no, it's not, and they can't back that up, that's kind of a red flag. I think, like you mentioned, with having difficult clients to work with, it works the other way around as well. So like, you can see if the narrator's going to be a hard person to work with, and also have a look at their back catalogs and see if they've done books of people reach out to them, find some references, see if they'll provide references. Most of the time it's based on auditions, but if you want a little extra security, if you're connected in the indie world or the author world or whatever, reach out to friends, see if they can connect you with an author who's worked with them.
That's definitely a good idea. Alrighty, well that's it for my my book creation questions here. We're going to switch it over to marketing, and I'm going to hand you back over to Lindsay.
Cool. Thanks, Jeffrey.
No problem.
All right. As I mentioned, this is the stuff I really want to know about, so let the interrogation begin. How do I sell 1 million audiobooks?
Well, what you need to...
Now that you've kind of worked with a lot of authors and put out quite a few audiobooks, have you seen anything that's just effective for marketing them?
There are a few kind of standard things that you should definitely be doing. I feel like I was saying this a year ago, and I worry that I'll still be saying it in a year, but the audio marketing situation for audiobooks, the marketing situation for audiobooks is nowhere near as developed as it is for ebooks, and I'm hoping that's just because it's a few years behind Amazon. We're beginning to see some promotional opportunities through sites, but I think, as I mentioned with Jeff, the problem is it's largely a subscription model, so indies have no control of the pricing of their books. Some books, audiobooks, are free, but you can't do that. So that's something that a publisher will have arranged with Audible separately. So don't think that you'll be able to set your first audiobook as perma-free and do that strategy, or be able to do a free BookBub run on your book and then put the price up again and sell later books in the series. You can't, because you have no price control, which is hopefully something that will change. But I mean, it massively limits the marketing opportunities. With that out of the way, there are a few things you can do. They're not desperately exciting, but they are better than nothing. When you finish the book, you are given 25 codes, and when you basically these are download codes, so you can give them away to anyone you like, and then they can go and get your book for free. And that comes into the, well, on mine, the Audible app, but maybe they can download the MP3s or something. And so absolutely use those as review copies. Send them out and say, you know, I'd really love a review, because like with books, reviews are important, but because there are so few other options, they are really super important. So, you know, don't just blast it out to you. And also you only get 25 of them, so you can't, you know, send out hundreds and hope for, you know, a percentage to come back to you. Send them out to people you know will review, and you know, it'd be good if they're positive. So send them to people who've, you know, got a track record of giving your books positive reviews, because you want someone who likes your stuff. You can do some other things with these that are more interesting, giving them away in like a competition or something. Someone I interviewed last year, Alan Peterson, he got together, which I thought was pretty smart, with a group of other authors who'd had audiobooks done, and they did a Rafflecopter giveaway. So they got all the books together, and then they said, you know, there's a grand prize of these 10 audiobooks from all of us, and then we put it together. And then, but this kind of really wasn't, it was kind of getting their word out about the audiobooks, but they were also adding all of those people to their mailing lists. And for books, for audiobooks, powerful way to sell things. So that's good uses of the codes. They give you 25 right away. They're different for the US and the UK. So if you want to give books away in the UK, you need to ask them for different codes. Also, if you run out, drop them an email, because they will probably send you more. I know a few people who've had maybe even 100 copies. So if you are a big author with a big following of people who are going to review your stuff, ACX will give you more codes. Hopefully, will give you more codes if you ask for them. So that's codes. Also, I guess, using the sample. I haven't checked this recently, but I'm sure it's in the terms and conditions still, that it's you can use 15 minutes of your book, of the audio of your book, somewhere else. So when you're on audible.com, you can go to your books page, and there'll be like this little play sample, and there's another thing. You can choose what that sample is, which you'll see in the upload process later on. So from when you're listening back to the book, find an awesome 5 minutes. Like, find something that is really good, because people will listen to that sample, and if it's just like, you know, title of book, read by narrator, preface, and if it's just like 5 minutes of preface or like historical details or whatever, it's not good. If it's 5 minutes of whatever your book is, whatever genre it's in, whatever exemplifies that, that's good for you. But you can do more than 5 minutes outside. So grab 15 minutes of your book, again, something that's super compelling, put it up onto SoundCloud or YouTube or whatever, and then post that around. Put it on your social media, put it on your blog, wherever you want to. You're allowed to put that 15 minutes out, and then link over to Audible and get people to buy it. So those are kind of the main kind of standard promotion things that are available. There are a few people, and I haven't experimented with any of these myself. I've got to thank Mark Cooper, actually, for these. He pointed me in the direction of them. And he says that the main one around is AudioVox, which I had come across, which is kind of an audio giveaway site. It's nothing like BookPub or anything exciting because there's, restrictions on it. But it's hopefully going to be something. If they make pricing adjustment available, it could be much bigger. So I'm sorry to disappoint on the marketing front. I do hope in a year it'll be better and they'll be more open to us.
Oh, it's good to know. I already learned some stuff I did not know, so I'm excited about that. So it sounds like authors, you're saying, have no say in pricing. Is it just completely dependent on the length of the book then?
In fact, most of the time it's someone buying on the subscription. So it's $15 a month. And that's that. It's all books are 1 credit. I think there used to be 2 credit books, but I haven't seen any in ages. So like War and Peace might in the past have been 2 credits, but now I've even seen I think there's books that are like 48 hours long and they're $15, and then there's books that are 30 minutes long and they are $15. There are people who buy a la carte, which basically means you go in and the book has a price, and this is length based. So for me, when I'm buying a book, I'll almost always use a credit and look for something long. But if there's a book that's 2 hours that I want and it's maybe $4 or $5, then I will definitely buy it and use a credit. So that's how it works. But for the most part, it's a credit-based system.
All right, yeah, I'm really excited. The guys that are doing my Dragon Blood series, I have the first 3 books in an omnibus because they're not really that long of novels by themselves. And they're going to go ahead and put out the first audiobook as the 3-book omnibus. So it's like this big 30-hour, $50 book, and I'm really excited that people can get it for 1 credit. So that's part of my, hopefully that'll be the campaign.
This is super appealing. I've recommended people do this in the past. If you've got 3 books up on there, bundle them together and accept that you've made an expensive book, but 30 hours is really appealing for $15. Yeah,
I'm glad I'm not paying for this one because the other one, the 9-hour book, is pretty pricey.
Yeah, it gets pretty expensive pretty fast.
Yeah, I should point out too, in case anybody's curious, if you have a perma-free book on Amazon, it seems that they're starting to do the audiobook for $1.99. That's happened to me, and I've seen it happen to other authors. I don't know if that's automatic, but I don't know if that's good or bad. It's just something to maybe be aware of.
It's a really good point. It's called Whispersync. This is Whispersync, right? What you're talking about?
This is the actual audiobook with the narrator. It's like a bundle thing. I think they're just it's not price matching, obviously, but I think it's because it's such an inexpensive book. They're saying, well, we'll just make the audiobook $1.99 too. And I've run across a couple other authors that have their perma-free, and then the audiobook is only $1.99, which means you don't make anything, so that kind of sucks. But
wow, without owning the original book?
On my page right now, well, maybe you have to download the perma-free. I'm not sure, but it's just listed. If you look at the Emperor's Edge, book 1, there's the paperback, and then there's the Audible. I think it's the audiobook.
I think because it's Whispersync will allow you to get the book for $1.99. So if you own a book, you can upgrade to the audiobook, which is, I don't know, some people say it's great because it drives sales and pushes your book up, but it's also, you're not really getting much money in the end of things, especially, audiobooks are expensive to produce, and then you're getting 40% on $2, which isn't great. But other people are like, Whispersync's great. It's selling so much more than before. Bottom line is improved. So I think it's, it's going to go that way. You don't get a say in whether it's Whispersync. So you just have to deal with it. But so it seems that then for a perma-free book, you can upgrade to Whispersync just as if it were a paid book. So $1.99.
Yeah, I've only done it once as a reader. I think it was one of the T. Morris steampunk books, was whatever, $6.99 for the paperback, and they gave me the option to get the audiobook for $5 or something.
If I could add something really quick here, inside the KDB Select, just before you approve to save and publish, number 10 on my list here says Kindle Matchbook. This title is enrolled in Kindle Matchbook, unchecked to opt out of the program. I know it has to do with if you buy one, then you can get the other one at a discounted price. And you can actually set the price if you wanted there too. You can go all the way up to half your normal book price or something like that, I think. But
I thought that was if you got the paperback, then you could get the ebook for.
Yeah, I originally thought it was the paperback as well, but I noticed they've taken out the words paperback in here, so I don't know if it just means other formats of the same title. I'm not certain.
Okay, well that's good to know.
Yeah, interesting. I'm not familiar with that for audiobooks, at least.
All right, we taught Simon something new.
Yeah, well, it's good to learn something. Yeah.
All right, mission accomplished. Let me tell you the other thing I was kind of wondering about. I wanted to ask you if I know that Audible has their affiliate program, and if people sign up, they get 1 free credit, I think.
Yep.
To enroll. I was wondering what your thoughts are on, like, telling your mailing list when your audiobook comes out, and also including the affiliate link and saying, hey, if you get my book, you can get it for free as your starter book. And
Oh yeah, I mean, if you like money, why not? You're going to be sending people there anyway. If they've never got a book before, sign up to the affiliate program for Audible and take their money. I mean, you're going to be doing it anyway, so why not?
Right. Well, do you know if do you still get paid if that's somebody's free book that they got to sign up?
Honestly, I haven't checked in a while, but yeah, you that's how it worked when I did the research for the book. I could probably check it for you, but I'm fairly confident. Yeah, if they sign up for a paid trial, you get more. But even if they sign up for a free trial, you still get a commission. I would double check it. Just check out Audible affiliate program, as always. But yeah, I think that's the case.
All right. Well, I'll do an update here on the show later this summer, guys, and let you know how it all went. And I don't think I'll make much affiliate income, but I'm just thinking any way I can to try to get sales on the audiobook when it comes out. And
yeah, I think the thing is, it's so easy to set up, and why not? You might not get many affiliate sales, but maybe a few bucks.
All right. Well, let me ask you, do you have any insight into ranking at Apple? Because I know Audible sells to them, or whatever their deal is, too. And that seems to actually be like that's where I'm more likely to get audiobooks rather than actually going to Audible. I don't know if others are the same way.
I do most, I think, through Audible, because when it's through Apple, it comes up as an a la carte sale, and I do a lot of credit sales. Apple is a mystery. I mean, I ask guests about this, and I feel like I know a bit about audiobooks, but no, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, Lindsay. I don't have advice on ranking in Apple. If I gave something, it would be not made up, but a guess at best.
All right, no problem. Apple is the inscrutable, the mystery. All right, one last question from me on this. Do you think reviews at Audible, the actual Audible site, are really important, or do you think people just kind of look at the Amazon sales page and reviews before deciding to buy a book?
Totally matter, because you can rank the narration. I think also people are more in, listening to an audiobook and buying an audiobook is a more expensive purchase, so I think people are more likely to go in and leave a more detailed review. I don't know stats on like sales to review numbers, but I imagine they're higher. And also on Amazon, you've got more detail around there. You can see the book's ranking. You can see, much easier than on Audible, and there's much fewer promotional opportunities for audiobooks. So one of the few things that can really make a difference and show your book to be good are reviews. So totally, as I was mentioning with the codes, use those to get your reviews and push for them.
Yeah, I thought I would offer those codes to people who have already reviewed on Audible, so I know they actually have an account and will leave a review.
Yeah. In fact, there is a neat trick. You can gift the book, so don't give those codes away to someone, because you can actually use those codes to download any book. So you can give the code and be like, hey, this is for my book, but they can just go in and download the latest John Grisham novel or whatever they want, which kind of sucks. So what you need to do is go into your own Audible account, enter all of the codes yourself, so you have 25 credits, and then buy your own book and gift it to them, which is also a really nice way to present it. So they get an email from Audible saying, Lindsay Broker has gifted you XYZ audiobook. I think it's Claim It Now or something, and then they can go across and grab that book, and not John Grisham's latest.
Awesome. That is an awesome tip there. That's worth the price of admission. So.
Again, I feel like I push you a lot to the videos I do, but I have a video of how to do that on YouTube.
Oh, okay. I'll check that out too. See if we can include the show notes there. Put it in the.
Sorry, I when people mention a bunch of resources on my show, I'm like, oh, this is going to take a while. But yeah, I'm doing the exact same thing when I'm a guest somewhere else, so I apologize.
That's all right. Okay, I'm going to hand you to Jeff. Do you have time for a few more questions? I was noticing we've already talked for an hour here.
Always.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, let's see here. Well, my first two questions look like they've already pretty much been covered. Let's see here. The only real marketing question I have is since I know ACX is an Audible and Amazon company there, is there any sort of expanded distributorship you have to buy in order to make your books available on Apple and other retailers, or is it automatically included?
No, this is a really important point, actually. Should have covered it before, actually. When you go with ACX, you have two options. You have exclusive, which is what we've talked about so far, which is what the majority of people do. And basically that means you get, as I already mentioned, 40% of the pie. So, the book sells for, let's say, $10, you get $4. There's another, and if you split it with a narrator, you get 2 and the narrator gets 2. The other option, that will get you distributed on Audible, and iTunes and Audible is Amazon, so they're tied in together. But that means you won't be anywhere else. You won't be on any other digital retailers. You won't be on CD form, not that you would particularly want to be, or anything else. And you can't. You are legally binded. I think it's that 7-year term. Need to check that. I mean, there's these easy to understand contracts, but you're bound exclusively for that period. So you can't then say, oh, I want to be on audiobooks.com as well. You can't go and give it to them because you've told, ACX, I want more money for exclusivity with you. However, there is the other option where you can say, I want non-exclusive. So I want my book to go through ACX. I want to find a narrator through ACX. I want it to be on Audible. I want it to be on iTunes, and I want it to be on Amazon. But I also want it to be on audiobooks.com. I also want a company wants to burn CDs and put them in gas stations. Then you need to choose non-exclusive distribution, which basically means you can't do a royalty split, because then the reason is, if it's for sale in a gas station, Amazon can't account for that. So, or ACX, sorry, can't account for that, so they don't know how many sales you've made, and so they can't pay the narrator their half, if you get where I'm coming from. The more important thing to bear in mind is you only get 20%. So you produce the book, you pay for it up front, you choose non-exclusive, and you get half the royalty that you would get if you went exclusive, which is a big chunk, especially because Audible is the main retailer of audiobooks. Yeah.
Oh, but as long as they have their own app and those apps are available on multiple platforms, I guess it wouldn't really make any difference. If you got whether an Android phone or an iPhone, personally iPhone's better, but if you have an iPhone and you can actually get the app for it, I guess it really wouldn't make any difference. I was just curious as to what format those things were there, but it's definitely good to know. So you notice more people take option 1 for the exclusivity bit?
My non-scientific survey, totally.
That works for me then. Alrighty, Lindsay, that's all I've got marketing wise.
All right. Well, then, you've given us some really great tips, Simon, and I already said the name of your book, Audiobooks for Indies, that everyone should definitely check out. Is there anything else that you'd like to plug, or anything while you're here?
Follow my podcast. Every Thursday, interviews with self-published authors, hybrid authors. Runs for about an hour. That's my main thing. That's where people should come to me first.
All right, and I'm sure everybody listening already knows, but that's at the rockingselfpublishing.com.
Yeah, sorry, and the name of that would be rockingselfpublishing.com, on iTunes, on all platforms, easy to find.
All right, well, thanks so much for coming on the show and for chatting with us today.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you both.
We appreciate all the info.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.